There are some players that can seemingly do it all in the attack, and Randal Kolo Muani is becoming the embodiment of this. Often likened to Thierry Henry for his playing style and his trajectory from the wing to a lethal striker, he was also tied with Lionel Messi and Kevin De Bruyne as the top playmaker in Europe, with 10 assists going into the 2022 World Cup. With a skill set like this, it's easy to see why Randal Kolo Muani, the boy from Villepinte, will be one of the most sought-after attackers in Europe in the not-so-distant future. Hey guys, welcome back to yet another Rabona TV video, this time a player profile on Randal Kolo Muani, the guy who almost won the World Cup for France. I feel bad referring to him as that, as he says he has nightmares about that save from Emiliano Martinez to this day. But yes guys, we'll get into just why Kolo Muani will be one of the top attackers for some time, his early beginnings, and of course an expert opinion on his strengths and weaknesses. If you enjoy the video as we're going through everything about his past, present, and future, hey, just consider subscribing. It seems as though the Parisian suburb of Bondy has a knack for producing some top football talents. On December 20th, 1988, Kylian Mbappe was born. Just 15 days prior, in that very same hospital, Randal Kolo Muani was born as well. His family is from the Congo and raised Randal and his brother in the city of Villepinte, where Randal got into football around the age of 7 thanks to his dad and brother. This will come as no surprise to anyone who has watched him play, but he used to love trying to dribble past his older brother from a very young age, as well as all of his other friends on the street, where he would have fine-tuned and developed his dribbling skill. After playing for the youth teams Villepinte FC, Tremblay FC, and Torcy, Randal Kolo Muani signed with FC Nantes' famed youth academy in 2015 at the age of 17. Kolo Muani actually resembles the demographic of a top player who has quote-unquote developed late. Despite signing with the academy at the age of 17, he wouldn't receive his senior debut until November 30th, 2018, just 6 days before his 20th birthday. And 1 month later, he would get his first start, but he never scored a single goal in that debut season. That summer, the summer of 2019, the belief in Kolo Muani may not have been at the highest, depending on who you asked within the FC Nantes setup, of course. In August of 2019, Kolo Muani was sent on loan to French 3rd Division side FC Boulogne. A 20-year-old sent to the 3rd Division, I mean, it doesn't scream future star, future 100+ million euro transfer fee, or someone who should be rubbing shoulders with Kylian Mbappe and the rest of Les Bleus in the World Cup final. But it's a good reminder of how there are many ways to the top, and just because a player isn't representing a top side by the age of 16 or 17, doesn't mean they won't become a top player. Well, with Boulogne, Kolo Muani wasn't a starter until December of the 2019-20 season, of which he began to nail down his place in the starting 11 for the side, splitting his duties between right wing and as a center forward. Unfortunately for Kolo Muani, the pandemic would come at an inopportune time. Well, it was inopportune for everyone, of course, but for him in particular, he was really beginning to find his form for Boulogne when the season came to a grinding halt in France. When he returned to Nantes, clearly they had taken note of that, as everything started to go right in the 2020-21 season, where he stayed with the Canaris and began to thrive. He was a starter basically immediately upon returning to his parent club, and he held on to that position throughout the Ligue 1 season, finishing with 9 goals and 8 assists for the club that narrowly escaped relegation. In fact, in their relegation playoff against Toulouse, Kolo Muani scored in the first of 2 legs that saw them survive on away goals. His final count was 10 goals and 9 assists across all competitions, as we saw Kolo Muani continue to split his time between center forward and right wing, but clearly his future belonged more central than wide on the right. Ahead of the 21-22 season, there was much talk of where Kolo Muani would end up, as his contract was due to end at the conclusion of the upcoming season. Yet he refused to sign a new deal with Nantes. At times, it felt as though things could get ugly between the player and the club, but both Kolo Muani and head coach Antoine Comboire never allowed it to. As Kolo Muani continued to play fantastic football for Nantes, going on to better last season's numbers with 13 goals and 7 assists, the pressure on him to re-sign with Nantes mounted. But he never gave in, with the announcement in March of 2022 from Eintracht Frankfurt sealing his fate. They had reached a pre-contract agreement with the French attacker, thus bringing an end to his Nantes story. Nantes president Waldemar Kita, who is a bit of a controversial figure to some in France, had this to say of Kolo Muani's departure. Quote, "He's going to leave and I very much regret it. There are 2 points on which I want to come back on. First of all, we've done everything. Antoine Comboire, the coach, and me, so that the player stays. A year ago, I tried to make contact with his father and offer him a big salary. He could have received more money than he'll ever get in Frankfurt. I have complaints to make given that they've been in contact with Frankfurt for 2 years now. It has been 2 years since they signed a contract with them. Frankfurt had put the work in as far back as 2020, as the president said, when Kolo Muani was playing for Boulogne and on his way back to Nantes, which speaks to Frankfurt's supreme scouting. Nevertheless, despite it being announced that Kolo Muani's future was elsewhere, his relationship with the coach, Comboire, never faltered, with Kolo Muani still starting every match he was available for despite being on his way out and playing a key role in FC Nantes' Coupe de France triumph. Upon which he said, quote, "It's a childhood dream come true. We shouted, danced in the locker room. It is full of emotions at the same time." Quote, "I still watch it. I know it off by heart. In my head, I said to myself, Randal, you have to shoot now. I tried to shoot towards the near post, but the goalkeeper made a very good save." Yes, that is Randal Kolo Muani speaking of how he will never ever forget that opportunity he had to win the World Cup for France. However, he probably never would have had that opportunity if it wasn't for how he has grown into a top attacker in Europe since joining Eintracht Frankfurt. And of course, an injury to one of his compatriots, but still, you have to be good to be considered and even better to be selected. And he was. But he was selected not because of what he did with Nantes last season, but how he is taken to Eintracht Frankfurt in the Bundesliga, with the fact that he was signed for free standing out even further. Adding to the confusion about where Kolo Muani was best deployed, he started the season out with 4 assists and 2 goals from his first 6 appearances. The contributions are fantastic, of course, given he's a newcomer, but the split between the assists and the goals for the new striker, well, you'd be excused for wondering just what kind of player positionally you have signed. He then went on a stretch of 7 matches without scoring for Frankfurt, but once he found his footing in mid-October of 2022, he hasn't looked back. And let's bring in Manuel Veith now from transfermarkt.com, who is producing great content on their YouTube channel now, as well as co-hosting Gegenpressing, the Bundesliga podcast. Manuel will help us to get a closer look at Muani's time with the Eagles, as they have made a name for themselves when it comes to developing talent, and Kolo Muani is the latest jewel in their crown.
His impact has been incredible in so many ways because they signed him for free from Nantes. He comes in and he's now scored 16 goals and 14 assists in 33 games across all competitions. For someone who was signed on a free transfer has been incredible. And it just shows how big of a talent he is, even though he's a little bit of a late bloomer, but also how good Frankfurt are in finding these players, identifying them, making them work in their system, and then giving them sort of the space to develop into these impact players. So when you say impact, I think it's kind of goes both ways, doesn't it?
As alluded to earlier, Frankfurt famously turned their entire club around with a shoestring budget, 2.5 million euros, signings like Haller, Rebic, Jovic, Kostic, Boateng, Jonathan de Guzman, and on and on. A mix of old and young, all fitting in the system, and all becoming better players because of it. Kolo Muani is no exception here.
His impact has been really interesting because when he first started with Eintracht Frankfurt this year, at one point he led the assist chart, right? But wasn't really that high up in goal scoring. It took him a few weeks until he got that going, and he's now 4th in Bundesliga scoring with 11 goals, even on goals with a certain Jamal Musiala, who's of course having an incredible season himself, right? That highlights how well he has done in the Bundesliga this year.
Just as he would at Nantes while he was still with them, Kolo Muani had a couple of stints on the wing for Frankfurt as well this season, as he has had an interesting career path, starting as a winger and then growing into a lanky frame of a striker, though he has the skill set and physical attributes of both, aka his speed. I mean, that would point to him being a solid winger as well, right?
A really good player that can sort of not just be the main focal point in attack, but also play off another striker, right? And he almost replaced Filip Kostic for some time on the wing there. And then now he's moved into the middle, and of course he's this impactful striker, and he's getting the goals that you want to have from a number 9. But I think what makes him so interesting is that he isn't just a number 9 that gets goals, but he can play various different roles in the attack. And I think you saw the same in France. Yeah, he's just a very well-rounded player.
But one thing that is always a welcomed attribute, no matter what position you are deployed in, is of course speed. And it's fair to say that Randal Kolo Muani possesses a great deal of it when compared to fellow Bundesliga speedsters.
When you look at his this top speed this year, Karim Adeyemi, he's first, ahead of Moussa Diaby and Alphonso Davies, which makes sense. Yep. But Randal Kolo Muani is 7th with a top speed of 35.97 kilometers an hour.
Not too bad.
So just to compare that, Adeyemi is first with 36.65. So it's tiny margins, right, in the top 10. Even though he's so tall, he's so incredibly fast. He almost looks like this lanky, weird winger at times, even though he's quite comfortable in the box.
So let's speak on that now, actually, as he has fully grown into his role as a striker for Frankfurt. He, of course, is seen as a late bloomer, as we have gone over already, but he has sharpened his skills quite quickly in Germany, already smashing his top goal and assist records.
I think it's also his ability to see teammates, right? He doesn't necessarily have this, in German you say, eigennützig, selfish ability where he just like finishes off. Like he has the ability to play off other players. I think that his finishing has improved quite a bit. Being able to pass off the ball or to create chances was always there, but to actually finish them is something that has grown. You often see that it takes some time for it to translate. But yeah, his strength is definitely finishing. His positioning hasn't gotten a lot better.
But Manuel notes that while Kolo Muani has improved a great deal when it comes to his presence in the box, his finishing and his overall positioning, there is still room for improvement when it comes to his aerial ability. And then, of course, the one skill or habit that all top attackers possess, consistency.
For Frankfurt, you have to be incredibly efficient because that's the way they play, right? They sit quite deep and then they try to transition quickly. There's probably another thing that I think I would like from him to be improved is more the consistency of it, right? You see that with the entire team. The entire team has these phases where they are world beaters, and then they have these phases where they are not. And, I think that comes with him growing in the system.
And so going beyond consistency, another area that has been pointed to as far as an area to grow would be the use of his weak foot. Some players are just one-footed. There are many examples of that. And if he could improve the use of his left foot, it would take him to another dimension completely. On top of that, while his presence in the box and his overall movement has been great this season, where he could improve slightly are his movements into space. Kolo Muani has shown that he much prefers to receive the ball at his feet in order to try to dribble his opponent, while all of the great strikers are equally as comfortable running onto the ball or into space for a first-time finish or one-touch and finish. But in reality, there is no real glaring issue with him that stands out above the rest. No single issue you can point to as a potential problem, at least. He's done well at almost everything so far.
All these little things that add up where you want to have him just improve to the package overall. But it's really hard to just pick out that one weakness.
It's splitting hairs. I'm asking you to find a weakness for a guy who has 16 goals and 14 assists. So it's like...
Yeah, and was picked up on a free transfer. I think for me, I just wanna see more consistency, which again sounds so ridiculous because the guy just was a late call-up for France team and then played an important role for their run to the World Cup final. Of course, if Nkunku doesn't go down with that injury, he wouldn't be there. So I guess you want him to be taking that next step so that it isn't up to someone else going out with an injury for him to be part of that squad, right? That you want him to be on that level. You look at these guys around him, he's pretty much on that same level. So I guess for me, I just want to see it more consistently all the time.
Like I mentioned earlier, consistency is what separates top players from the rest. Yes, ability plays an incredible role along with commitment and professionalism, but consistently scoring goals or grabbing assists is what separates the fleeting form of good players from the fantastic ability and pedigree of top players. With Kolo Muani, so far, so good. And consistency in his play will certainly bring another big payday for Eintracht Frankfurt in the future. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and be sure to check out Manuel Vest's content with Transfermarkt on YouTube, linked below. But beyond that, another thank you from me here for sticking around for the entirety of this video. If you made it this far, hey, shout out to you, man. It's very much appreciated. I'm Adrian, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.